Well, welcome and thank you for joining me for this video where I'm sharing my opinions on what is going on in the Middle East right now. My name is Janice Kortkamp. I've been researching the Middle East, particularly Syria, but the entire region for over 7 years now, and spend kind of all my days doing that. But I've also made 7 trips to Syria during the war, 6 to Lebanon, and 1 to Kuwait, and I am fascinated by the region and what I've been learning about it, and I want to share that with other people here in America. So this is actually the first video of a series that I'll be doing on these current events. I want to go back though and start this with a short story. My husband Sid and I actually went to see the latest Star Wars movie last night. This is the 9th film of the series. It's the last one. When the first one came out, I had just gotten my driver's license, and as a new punk kid driver, I talked my parents into letting me have the car for a day as though I were driving to school, but instead of driving to school, I actually drove to the nearest big city and went to the mall and saw the first Star Wars. So I was a youngster. Now, all these years later, Sid and I went to the theater, and this little kid, this young man, I should say, was behind the counter, and we asked him for 2 tickets, and when he gave us the amount, it was a much smaller amount than I expected. And so I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he goes, "Well, I gave you all the senior discount." Talk about a rude awakening, a blessing and a curse. I decided to just thank him for the discount and use that money to get a Mai Tai at the bar before heading into the theater. So then the title of this video is going to be Patience Padawan. Padawan in Star Wars terminology means learner, and that just kind of hit me on the way home last night, because we're going to be talking about, over this video and several others to come, this theme that I want to build on, which is the deep state versus the deep civilizations. So the deep state versus the deep civilizations, and we're going to go into some detail over the next several weeks here. Iran, of course, has been taking center stage in the news of late, and so we're going to be focusing on Iran tonight. And, as I see the comments by many Americans, and they're talking about, sorry for the language, but they'll say shithole countries over there, people living in mud huts, etc. And anytime people are talking like that, that's just an immediate, they might as well be wearing a sign across their forehead that says, "I know nothing." In fact, they know less than nothing, because they have a false preconception of the region. And what we need to do is build a foundation of understanding, because when you have a foundation, then you can have rational, intelligent discussion. Because Iran is not only 6,000 or more miles away from Washington, D.C., it is, in fact, 6,000 plus years away from Washington, D.C. and America. And so if you're going to compare the two, Iran gets the senior discount, and America is the young kid behind the counter selling movie tickets. So we're going to talk today about this gulf of this, it's much more than 6,000 years. The history of Iran goes back, the earliest settlement there is from something like over 7,000 years BC. But this is not going to be a history lesson. I'd much prefer to think of this as old Omar Khayyam would say, as though we're sitting under a tree, under a bough with a jug of wine and a loaf of bread, and thou, just hanging out together and talking. Old Khayyam, as he talked as he called himself, was talking about making a little love under that bough and having it be paradise, you know, I'm just trying to make a little sense. And this is what I'm shooting for. Another thing that Omar Khayyam said was, when I want to understand what is happening today or try to decide what will happen tomorrow, I look back. And that's very important in thinking about the situation in the Middle East right now. We need to look back a bit. And we're going to start by looking way back. Persian culture, of course, as I said, goes back to, you know, there were settlements in Iran in that area going back like 10,000 years. The Persian Empire started around 500, 550 BC. And, you know, one of the ways of helping people understand how advanced that culture was, Khayyam was born in, I think, 1048. And poetry, if I'm understanding correctly, was a bit of, you know, was a hobby. The guy was a brilliant mathematician and astronomer. And so when he was a mathematician, I'll just read to you some of his accomplishments. He's most notable for his work on the classification and solution of cubic equations, where he provided geometric solutions by the intersections of conics. Khayyam also contributed to the understanding of the parallel axiom. As an astronomer, he designed the Jalali calendar, solar calendar with a very precise 33 years intercalation cycle, you know, and then it goes on from there. So this man was brilliant, and this was, you know, around the time of the First Crusades. My dad introduced me to Omar Khayyam when I was a little kid. It was really his favorite poetry. And, you know, at that time and before it was very popular, there was this movement of Orientalism where people were discovering the Orient and, you know, wanting to seek out the exotic, the spices, the perfume, you know, all of these things. And oftentimes I've been accused of being an Orientalist because I love the region so much and the people there. I don't think of myself as an Orientalist. I think of myself as a realist because, yes, as an amateur archaeologist and historian, a student of history, I adore the ancient, just the march through time that you can see in these areas. But, you know, as a human being, I like to focus on the current and what is going on and the cultural realities that I personally observe, and not to only focus on what is in the past. And it's very hard to be an Orientalist when you're sitting with friends in Syria or in the region, and they know more about different episodes of Friends or The Big Bang Theory than I do, or they're introducing me to the lyrics and the music of a German death metal band, you know, or you're sitting a meeting with scientists and professors, artists, musicians, writers, philosophers, etc. So I hope that I'm not an Orientalist. I don't think that I am, but it is a fascinating, diverse region.